Farmers in western Tennessee and Mississippi have a strange habit. They walk their fields after a heavy rain, eyes down, because the water pulls things up out of the dirt. And what keeps coming up is shark teeth. Big, black, glossy ones, hundreds of kilometers from any ocean, sitting in a soybean field. And people assume somebody dropped them there, or that they washed up from the Gulf somehow. Neither. Those teeth are exactly where the animal died, because the Mississippi Valley used to be the ocean. A shallow sea ran straight up the middle of this continent, from the Gulf all the way to southern Illinois. And it was in the water above, what is now farmland, casinos, barges, and river towns that these things swam. So when you see something enormous surfacing next to a dock in the thumbnail, the joke is that it isn't lost. It's home, and we're the ones who showed up late. 11 monsters, working down to a 10-meter animal with a bite stronger than a tyrannosaur's, one that hunted dinosaurs on these riverbanks. Let's get into the water. Number 11. In 1952, a fossil hunter in the middle of the continent cracked open a chunk of chalk and found something that reads more like a crime scene than a fossil. Inside a 4.5-meter predatory fish was another fish, almost 2 meters long, swallowed whole, head first, completely intact. The big one had eaten it, and then died right then, with dinner still in its throat. Best guess, the prey thrashed hard enough on the way down to rupture something inside its own killer. That predator was Xiphactinus, and once you see the head, you don't forget it. It had a jutting bulldog underbite, a mouth that swung open into a huge circular gape, and long fangs that pointed backward and inward, so anything it grabbed could only go one direction. That specimen is still one of the most famous fossils ever pulled out of North America. 2 animals, 1 bad decision, frozen mid-mistake for 80 million years. Number 10. Now here's a thing that shouldn't exist. Picture a bird about the size of a grown man standing upright, that could not fly at all. Its wings had shrunk down to almost nothing, just a little bone tucked against the body. It swam with huge back feet set way at the rear, like a loon that had gone all in. It couldn't really walk either. On land, it probably shoved itself along on its belly, and its beak was full of teeth. Actual teeth, sharp ones, set into grooves in the jaw, pointing backward for gripping fish. Hesperornis was a bird from a time when birds hadn't finished becoming birds, and it hunted this inland sea in flocks, diving deep and coming up with whatever it caught. Every bird alive today is beaked and toothless. This one was neither, and it spent its whole life in the water above what is now the American Midwest. Number 9. Go far enough back and things stop making sense entirely. Roll the clock to 300 million years ago, long before the sea, when this region was a hot coastal swamp. The swamp that eventually got buried and pressed into the coal seams they still mine in Illinois and Kentucky today. And in the water there was a shark that grew its teeth in a way nothing before or since has managed. Instead of rows of teeth lining the jaw, Adestus grew them on 2 curved blades that stuck straight out of the middle of its mouth, top and bottom, like a pair of pinking shears. New teeth pushed out at the front, old ones got shoved forward and out. Nobody's completely sure how it used them. Best current idea is that it slashed downward through schools of fish, cutting them in half on the way through. Miners have been finding these tooth whorls in the coal for over a century, and every one of them looks like a piece of machinery somebody lost. Number 8. Everything else on this list is gone. This one is still in the river right now. If you go out on the Mississippi tonight below Memphis, there are alligator gaur down there in the dark, armored, cigar-shaped fish over 3 meters long, with a broad snout full of 2 rows of teeth, covered in scales so hard and interlocking that early settlers used them as arrowheads, and the hides got used like sandpaper. Here's the part that matters. Gars have been doing this, essentially unchanged, for more than 100 million years. This animal shared the water with the mosasaurs. It watched the asteroid come and go. It has an air bladder it can gulp with, so it survives in warm, stagnant water where nothing else can breathe. Every other giant on this list got wiped out by something. The gar just kept going, and it is still out there tonight, floating just under the surface, doing exactly what it was doing when dinosaurs were alive. Number 7. 72. That's how many bones were in this animal's neck. More than any creature that has ever lived on this planet, before or since. A giraffe has 7. You have 7. Elasmosaurus had 72, stacked into a neck that ran over 6 meters, more than half the length of the entire animal, tipped with a small head full of interlocking needle teeth. And it was not the snake-like whip everybody draws. Those vertebrae were packed tight and stiff. The neck could not coil, could not rear up out of the water like the postcard sea monster. What it could do was creep. The body stayed back, 4 broad paddles holding it steady, and the head crept forward through a school of fish from below and behind, arriving before the animal did. By the time anything noticed a body, the mouth had already closed. Number 6. Not everything terrifying in this sea had teeth. Some of them just had a shell, and it's the scale that gets you. The biggest ammonites in the Cretaceous seas grew coiled shells that reached across wider than a dining table, some pushing close to 2 meters. Ammonites were relatives of squid and octopus, living in the outer chamber of that spiral, with tentacles out front and a hard beak in the middle, and they controlled their depth by pumping gas in and out of the sealed chambers behind them. Basically a living submarine ballast system. So what you'd actually see, drifting past you in green water, is a shell the size of a tractor tire hanging perfectly level, with arms trailing out the front of it. And there were millions. Ammonites are the single most common fossil in these rocks. You can find whole hillsides of them, which is exactly why the next few animals on this list got so big. Something has to be feeding all that. There's also a detail on some of these shells that says a lot about the neighborhood. Rows of small, round punctures, spaced evenly, that line up almost perfectly with the tooth pattern of a young mosasaur. Whether that's really a bite mark is still argued over, but somebody was chewing on them. Number 5. Sharks in this sea were not scavengers picking at leftovers. The one that ran the middle of the water column was Cretoxerina, about 7 meters, roughly the build of a great white but heavier, and it earned a nickname from the people who dig it up. The Ginsu shark, after the knives that cut through anything. It's not a nickname somebody made up for fun. It's a description of the damage. Its teeth were smooth-edged, thin and razor-sharp instead of serrated, built for slicing clean rather than sawing, and they show up as gouges on the bones of just about everything else in this list. Bitten marine reptile bones, sheared fish spines. There are mosasaur remains from these rocks with Cretoxerina teeth still embedded in them. The animals that ate everything else were themselves being eaten, and this is what was doing it. Number 4. In 1834, huge dark vertebrae started turning up on plantations in Alabama and Mississippi. So many and so big that people used them as furniture. Andirons for fireplaces, blocks to prop things up. When a scientist finally examined them, he decided from the size and shape that they belonged to some enormous marine reptile, and he named it Basilosaurus, king lizard. The name is a permanent, uncorrectable mistake, because it was not a reptile at all. It was a whale, an early whale that hadn't finished the transition yet, 18 meters of it, long and serpentine and eel-like, rather than the barrel shape whales settled into later, with a wolfish mouth of cutting teeth and, tucked uselessly against its side, tiny back legs a few centimeters long, complete with knees and toes. Legs on a whale. It is the state fossil of both Mississippi and Alabama, and it is still, officially, called the king lizard. Number 3. Now the animal that ran the whole sea. Tylosaurus reached about 13 meters, think a semi-trailer with a tail, and it was a marine reptile, a monitor lizard relative that had gone back to the water and gotten enormous. Long body, 4 paddles, a finned tail doing the work. But the thing that makes it different from every other giant in this water is the front of its skull. Its snout stuck out past the teeth into a solid, reinforced, bony point, and the bone there is thickened and dense, with healed damage found on real specimens. It used its face as a weapon. It rammed. It would come up hard and fast from below and hit the prey with the front of its head to stun or wound it before biting, and then those jaws did the rest, hinged in the middle to open wider, with a second row of teeth in the roof of the mouth to walk food backwards down the throat. Stomach contents from these animals include fish, sharks, diving birds, and other mosasaurs. Number 2. Everybody pictures Megalodon as a great white blown up to monster size. And that's wrong in a way that actually makes it worse. It was not a giant great white. It belonged to a completely separate shark lineage, one that had been producing giants for millions of years. And at somewhere between 15 and 18 meters, it was heavier and blockier than anything alive. A fish with a jaw a person can stand inside, and teeth the width of a spread hand. The southeastern rivers and creeks that drain into the Mississippi are one of the best places on the continent to find those teeth, and people pull them out of the gravel constantly. And here's what those teeth tell us that nothing else does. This animal ate whales, not fish. Whales. Fossil whale bones from these regions carry the gouges to prove it. The Gulf and the waters feeding it were warm and full of prey, and this is what that kind of abundance builds at the top. And number 1. Deinosuchus. The name means terrible crocodile, and for once the name is doing honest work. 10 meters long, weighing several tons, with a broad, heavy snout and thick, bony armor down the back. A crocodile more than twice the length of the biggest saltwater crocs alive today, cruising the warm coastal rivers and estuaries along the edges of this seaway, right where the lower Mississippi runs now. And it wasn't eating fish. We know exactly what it was eating, because the evidence is written on the victims. Duck-billed dinosaur bones from these deposits carry deep puncture marks that match its teeth, and some of those wounds show signs of healing, meaning the dinosaur got hit, got away, and lived long enough for the bone to grow back over the hole. Its bite has been estimated in the range that rivals a tyrannosaur's. Picture a dinosaur coming down to a riverbank in what is now Mississippi to drink, and something the length of a school bus coming up underneath it. So that's the water. Next time you're crossing the river on a bridge, or watching a barge push upstream, or standing on a dock somewhere between Memphis and New Orleans looking at brown water, that same space held a bird with teeth, a shark that grew shears out of its mouth, a whale named after a lizard, and a crocodile that hunted dinosaurs. And the strangest part is that one of them never left. The gar is still down there. Which one of these do you think would still be here if we hadn't shown up? Tell me below, because I want to know if you'd bet the same way I would.